Private jet aircraft substitution sounds like a small operational detail until it changes the trip you thought you approved. The quote names an aircraft, the photos look right, the cabin category matches the request, the departure time works, the passenger count fits, everyone relaxes. Then, before departure, the aircraft changes, and suddenly the buyer discovers whether the original quote was a serious plan or just a polished aircraft presentation. If you want private jet charter explained for serious buyers, not people buying fantasy, subscribe to Jetmaster. This channel is for charter buyers who care about control, privacy, time, and not approving expensive assumptions because the cabin photo looked good. Here's the mistake I want you to avoid. Do not panic every time an aircraft changes, but do not accept vague substitution language either. Aircraft substitution is not automatically a red flag. Vague substitution standards are the red flag. I0Os, ISTM, MM going to show you what to clarify before approving a private jet quote, what comparable aircraft means, whether the replacement protects cabin fit, luggage capacity, range, fuel stop exposure, airport and runway fit, Wi-Fi, lavatory expectations, passenger comfort, price impact, and who gets to approve the change before the trip moves forward? Latire TMs start with the blunt truth. Private aviation is not bought only as transportation. It is bought for control, privacy, timing, comfort, productivity, flexibility, confidence. A replacement aircraft can preserve those things, it can weaken those things, or it can change the trade-off entirely. So the useful question is not, did the aircraft change? The useful question is, does the replacement still protect the mission? That is the serious buyer standard. Point 1. Aircraft substitution can happen for legitimate reasons. This is important. A replacement aircraft may be necessary because of maintenance, prior trip delays, crew planning, weather disruption, airport constraints, owner schedule changes, operational repositioning, a runway issue, range planning, or another factor that does not automatically mean the provider is careless. Sometimes the replacement may even be better. It may protect the schedule. It may solve a range concern. It may avoid a fragile positioning plan. It may be more practical for the route. So no, substitution is not automatically bad service. The problem is when the buyer is told, worry, is similar, and nobody defines similar. Similar in what way? Similar cabin class, similar age, similar cabin dimensions, similar luggage capacity, similar range, similar lavatory, similar Wi-Fi, similar runway performance, similar comfort for the actual passengers on the actual route. That is where the real conversation begins. Point 2. Comparable aircraft is not a magic phrase. Comparable is one of the most dangerous words in private jet charter if nobody defines it. It can mean category, it can mean seating, it can mean general market quality, it can mean capability, or it can mean almost nothing useful for the specific mission. For a short 1-hour flight with 2 passengers and light luggage, category-level comparability may be enough. For a coast-to-coast business flight with 6 passengers, bags, work calls, and a hard arrival window, category-level comparability may be too thin. For a family ski trip with children, pets, gear, and a smaller mountain airport, category is definitely not enough. Ask, does comparable include cabin size? Does it include luggage capacity? Does it include range and fuel stop exposure? Does it include the same departure and arrival airports? Does it include Wi-Fi if working in the air matters? Does it include lavatory expectations? Does it include passenger-specific needs? If the answer is only same class, slow down. Same class may not mean same mission. Point 3. Cabin fit is where substitution becomes real for passengers. A replacement aircraft may technically seat the same number of people. That does not mean it provides the same experience. Seat count is not cabin fit. Cabin fit includes how passengers sit, work, talk, rest, move, store bags, access the lavatory, use the cabin for the actual flight duration. For a short business hop, the difference may be minor. For a family trip, a long-range flight, a client meeting, or a high-pressure executive itinerary, the difference can matter. Ask, what is the seating layout? Does the cabin still fit this passenger group? Is the lavatory comparable? Is cabin height and movement comfort still appropriate? Does the aircraft still support work, rest, family travel, or privacy expectations? Are the photos of the actual replacement aircraft? That last question matters. Do not accept a replacement purely because it has enough seats on paper. A serious buyer asks whether the cabin still fits the purpose of the trip. Point 4. Luggage can break a substitution. This one shows up fast. The original aircraft may handle the passengers and bags. And then, the aircraft changes. The replacement still seats the group, but it has weaker baggage capacity. Now the golf clubs, skis, family bags, pet gear, medical equipment, business cases, or large hard-side suitcases become the problem. That is not a small issue. If the trip depends on the luggage profile, the substitute must preserve the luggage assumption. Ask, does the replacement handle the same baggage load? Does it handle the same oversized items? Will anything need to move into the cabin? Does baggage affect range or fuel stop exposure on this replacement aircraft? Who confirms baggage fit before we accept the substitute? Do not let EEOO same category OOs hide a luggage downgrade. A private charter that cannot carry the real bags is not a better experience. It is an expensive compromise with nicer lighting. Point 5. Range, fuel stops, and runway fit can change the route. A substitute aircraft can change the trip even when the itinerary looks the same. Range is the obvious example. If the replacement has less usable range under the real conditions, the route may require a fuel stop. Maybe that fuel stop is acceptable. Maybe it is not. A fuel stop can add time, reduce privacy, create disruption risk, complicate customs planning, affect a meeting schedule, or change the passenger experience. Runway and airport fit matter too. A replacement aircraft may handle the original departure and arrival. Smaller airports, mountain airports, hot weather departures, high altitude airports, short runways, heavy luggage, all of that can change the practical plan. Ask, does the replacement preserve the same departure and arrival airports? Does it avoid additional fuel stops under expected conditions? Does it affect runway suitability at either airport? Does it change departure time or arrival time? Does it create new weather, customs, handling, parking, or crew planning exposure? A substitute aircraft should be judged against the route, not just the category label. Point 6. Amenities can matter when they are part of the mission. Do not pretend every amenity is superficial. Sometimes Wi-Fi matters. Sometimes an enclosed lavatory matters. Sometimes a quiet cabin matters. Sometimes a work table matters. Sometimes pet handling matters. Sometimes medical comfort matters. Sometimes family seating matters. If the original aircraft was approved because it supported one of those needs, the replacement should be checked against that same need. This is especially true for executive travel. If the traveler expects to work in the air, a substitute aircraft without comparable connectivity may weaken the entire business case for the flight. If the traveler is with family, the cabin layout may matter more than the aircraft name. If the traveler has mobility needs, the door, stairs, cabin, and lavatory may matter more than the category. A serious buyer does not ask, is it still a nice jet? That question is too soft. Ask, does it still solve the mission? Point 7. Know who approves the substitute and when the change is final. This is where buyers get surprised. Some agreements may allow substitution within a defined standard. Some may require buyer consent. Some may allow replacement by category. Some may treat a provider cause substitution differently from a buyer schedule change. Some may affect cancellation or refund terms. Jetmaster is not giving legal advice here. The practical point is simple. If the aircraft matters, the approval process matters. Ask before you approve the quote, "Lo easy you as use. Is aircraft substitution allowed? What events can trigger it? Does the buyer approve the replacement? Does approval need to be written? What details will be provided before acceptance? What happens if the buyer rejects the substitute? Is there a refund, cancellation right, alternate option, or revised quote? Could substitution affect total cost, fees, minimums, pass-throughs, or repositioning? Do not negotiate the aircraft and price while ignoring the change process. That is how the conversation becomes emotional and rushed later. Point 8. Red flags in substitution conversations. Here are the ones that should slow you down. Similar aircraft. With no definition. Same class. With no cabin, luggage, range, or runway detail. Pressure to approve before replacement details are shared. Photos that do not match the final replacement aircraft. Seat count reassurance while luggage and comfort are ignored. A replacement that adds a fuel stop without clear timing and cost impact. A different airport plan presented like a minor detail. A lower quote that depends on fragile aircraft availability. A vague answer is not always malicious. It may simply mean the trip has not been pressure tested. Either way, the buyer should not approve a high-value trip on vague aircraft logic. Quick pause here. This is exactly why the free 10-day Jet Master private jet charter course is linked in the description and pinned comment. Most buyers compare private jet options by aircraft name, cabin photo, and total quote. That is not enough. The smarter buyer understands aircraft fit, quote, assumptions, route trade-offs, airport choice, luggage, timing, safety questions, and what happens when the plan changes. Use the course before you approve a quote, especially when the trip depends on more than just getting from one airport to another. Now, here is the aircraft substitution checklist before approving a private jet quote. 1. What specific aircraft is proposed and what assumptions are attached to it? 2. Is aircraft substitution allowed under the quote or agreement? 3. What events can trigger substitution? 4. What does comparable aircraft mean for this trip? 5. Does comparable include cabin size, not only category? 6. Does the replacement need enough luggage capacity for the real baggage load? 7. Does it need to preserve the same departure and arrival airports? 8. Does it need to avoid additional fuel stops? 9. Does it need comparable Wi-Fi, lavatory, cabin layout, or passenger-specific features? 10. Who must approve the substitute aircraft? 11. What details will be provided before approval? 12. What happens if the substitute changes timing or cost? 13. What happens if the buyer does not accept the replacement? 14. Are cancellation or refund terms different if the substitution is provider caused? 15. Are the answers written into the quote, me as email, agreement, or trip notes? That is the serious buyer framework. Not because every aircraft substitution is bad. It is not. A replacement aircraft can be normal, practical, or even helpful, but the mission standard should not disappear when the aircraft name changes. So before you approve a quote, define what must be protected. Cabin fit, luggage, range, airports, timing, comfort, privacy, work capability, passenger-specific needs, approval rights, cost impact. That is how you avoid fake precision. A polished aircraft name is not the whole decision. The real decision is whether the trip protects your time, privacy, comfort, flexibility, and purpose. If a replacement aircraft preserves those things, the substitution may be acceptable. If it weakens those things, you should know before the change becomes final. The most dangerous substitution is not always a smaller aircraft, an older aircraft, or a late change. The most dangerous substitution is the one described with vague reassurance instead of written mission standards. Private aviation should create control before the trip begins. If aircraft changes, you should still understand the plan. And don't forget, your Jetmaster journey starts now.